All right, there we go. We are live. To anybody watching this pre-registered, thank you. Thank you for joining us. And if you're tuning into this live on LinkedIn, again, thanks for joining us live. Hopefully you've bumped into something you're glad to bump into today. And then finally, if you're watching this after the date, thanks for checking back in, and hopefully you see some value in the conversation today. I'm really excited about this because today we are going to be talking about being brave in everything that you do across sales, marketing, and growing your business. We at Air Marketing, we talk about being brave and selling more. So be brave, sell more is our tagline. And the idea behind that is it takes bravery to grow a business. It takes bravery to grow a brand, and it takes bravery to go out and sell something. And you know, how much bravery is good versus bad is one of the topics we're going to be talking about today. Is there a point where bravery becomes stupidity, or can we be as brave as we like as we go out and grow a brand in market? And I'm delighted today to be joined by four people, by Matt Potter, Lewis Kemp, Bethany Joy, and James Brooks. And Matty, you might notice, looks slightly different to the image that we had in the lead up to this. He is a last-minute stand-in for Dan. So firstly, Matt, for diving in last minute. We genuinely appreciate it. It's good to have you here. Do you want to just give us a quick 20 seconds on you, your role, the company you're representing, and you know, the day-to-day of what you do?
Yeah, of course. So obviously it was originally supposed to be Dan, who I'm stepping in for. He's the co-founder of Offended and sort of the creative genius behind that sort of thing. I myself, day-to-day, I'm an illustrator and animator. I'm the second longest serving there, so I sort of understand why we do things the way we do and how we do them. And for me, it's a case of how can I take our message and how we do things and putting that out there visually for our clients. So.
Nice. Lewis, I'll just come around to you quickly if that's okay. Would you mind giving us a quick 20-30 seconds as well?
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, so Lewis, I'm a founder of Lightbulb Media. We manage social media, content marketing, and paid advertising for brands that really want to make a splash in their market. So my job is to pre-vet all the people that are going to be vanilla versus all the people we can actually have some fun with, and we've got some real potential for. So yeah, that's me.
Nice. Beth, can I come to you?
Yeah. So I'm Bethany Joy. I'm a freelance brand voice strategist, because I'm kidding myself that is marginally less wanky than consultant. But that is effectively what I am, working with companies on their brand language and their brand identity and how that's worked out. So really helping them figure out who they are and how to sound like who they are when they communicate.
Ideal. And James, last but not least.
Hello. Yes, I'm James Brooks, founder of Team Brooks. We're a small agency that work with predominantly food and beverage brands. So that's either brands that sell in the supermarkets or some of the big fast food brands, creating content and particularly social media content, and also doing kind of larger activations that, you know, are particularly social media focused.
Yeah. Brilliant. Lovely. Well, look, thank you to all of us for joining. If you're watching this and you've got questions for the panel, feel free to put them in the comments, or post a comment like you normally would on LinkedIn. And if I can get it and weave it into the conversation, I'll absolutely do that. If you don't have a question, love to hear just where you're tuning in from, where company-wise, but also geographically. We like to see how many continents we can cover on this event, and quite a lot of the time we get every continent, or other than whichever one of the Alaska is a continent. Maybe sometimes we don't get those, but we certainly get the majority of the globe covered, which is lovely to see. I'd like to just start us with a fairly broad question. And for those of you that aren't going first, you get a bit of thinking time on this, just around any examples that stand out for you of really good, brave marketing or brave activity in terms of growing a business. And I often think back to conversations. I don't know, for example, the first time somebody sat there for an agency on behalf of Cadbury's and went, you know what, let's get a guy in a gorilla suit and get him drumming. Some of you might be old enough to remember that. Some of you may not be, but you know, what an advert that was, and a few years ago. And I just think about that conversation and what would have been the reaction in the room when that landed, and how brave was it to suggest that? And yet how brilliant was it? I just wonder if you've got any examples, and happy to put your hand up first if you feel like you've got one straight away, where you think that was a really good example of being brave and getting the balance right. Beth, have you got an example at mind?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm very focused. Think about the language element of things, rather than kind of broader the business and marketing. But yeah, I think one of the brands I have quite liked in recent years that I think are a good example of bravery in action are I don't know if you've come across Dead Happy, the kind of end of life life insurance brand, and I love their marketing and their tone of voice. And I think what is really interesting about them is that their bravery has just really taken the form of really bucking the trend of their industry. So that's been quite fascinating. Obviously, lots of different ways to be brave, but for them, kind of working in traditionally a very safe and very formal and very cautious industry, you know, dealing with quite a delicate topic, end of life, funeral plans, life insurance, that kind of stuff. And basically, if you Google them right now, if you don't know them, and have a look, and or even just from the very start, from their logo, they've got like a smiling skull, and it's just everything about it is really upending the way that industry has traditionally talked about itself. And I think they do it to great effect, partly, I think, because they are really aware of their audience, and they're particularly talking to generally a younger set of people for whom death is quite a distant thing. And so there's a little bit more ability to be slightly lighter with it. I really love it. Personally, it actually works for me as an individual. I really like it, but actually as in a professional capacity as well, I think I just admire that they kind of looked around at the sector, and rather than just going, we're different from everyone else in our sector, they just went ahead and were really different. And that's a big thing for me as well, actually. Don't tell everyone you're going to be different and brave, just fucking do it. And they really fucking did it. And it's brilliant. So definitely Google them if you haven't.
Lewis, how about you? Lewis, any of you jump in if you've got one?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Dead Happy as well. But for me personally, and maybe this is just a personal opinion, I love Ryanair. I love Ryanair because they just don't give a fuck. Like, you're still gonna fly with us. I can say whatever I want to you. You still want to go to Ibiza for 15 quid. So, and I think the people that they are targeting, it's only really the pearl clutchers that don't like it. Like, you can't speak to me like this. And, well, actually, I can, because you've booked 5 times this year. I've got all the data for it. So, yeah, for me, Ryanair are brilliant. Anyone that's just completely in your face like that, I love.
I think what's great about Ryanair as well, particularly on TikTok and the stuff that they've been doing there, is just that they really understand the culture and what makes them different or annoying, or like they're so self-aware, and they don't take themselves too seriously. So they will make jokes about the fact that you don't get a bag, you have to pay extra for everything and stuff like that. And I just think that is so smart. And I think another brand who I think are doing similar stuff to that as well, Duolingo, the language learning app. And again, they've taken the same sort of approach, particularly on platforms like TikTok, where they'll make jokes about the fact that you'll start learning a language and learn in every language to say that you're eating an apple and give up after 3 days or whatever. And like they just don't take themselves too seriously. And I think that is like what bravery is all about right now, is actually looking at yourself as a brand and going, right, how do I not just take? How do I give something that's entertaining and like really relatable and really current? And I think that it's very easy for us to like either be sort of romantic about the past or romantic about how we like culture to be, when actually like there's literally nothing that you can do to sort of push against culture. Like, popular culture is what it is, and so it's like a wave. It's coming whether you like it or not. So it's either, do you sort of try and resist it and get like swept away, or do you ride that wave? And so I'm constantly looking at, right, what's happening right now, what's the conversation right now, what's the culture in this moment. And I think brands that nail that at the moment they're the ones that are winning.
Matthew,
yeah, I was just going to say, just to follow on from that, I think, James, when you touched on self-awareness, that goes so far to actually achieving a lot of what we try and do with risk-taking, because that contributes to that authentic voice that we're talking about, that one that people instantly trust. Even if you're not really saying anything, it feels right. It feels like it's coming from the right place. And I think with what you're talking about then about popular culture, there's that thing about where we look back and we try and be nostalgic and stuff, but then we realize that at the time that was actually popular. That wasn't different or cool. We just think it is now. And all that is really is, on some level, a little bit of deflection of what we're currently trying to do. Sort of don't look at what it's like now, look at then. And I think getting that self-awareness, and when you talk about Ryanair, it is a great example because they just wear everything and they put it into their armor and they put it back out there. And like you said, having that freedom to know that whatever they really say or do isn't really going to affect what they're trying to do, but they're still going and doing it. For us, like my example, I guess it's a little bit different. It's a little bit insular in terms of an offended one. We were working with a recruitment agency, and instead of going down the hole, like trying to make them feel like they're giving people a new life and quite wanky in that sense, we actually got one of the big picker vehicles where it's like a crane with a thing. We would go up to high-rise buildings, extend it out, go to the window, and basically trying to tap on the window and show people who look miserable in a job that there's a company out there waiting for you. So there's somebody at work and they see something at the window and it's someone offering them a new job like that. So it was, completely different and maybe brave in a little bit more of a silly sense. But yeah, I think what James said about bravery being openly self-aware and being happy to be yourself is actually really hard in sort of today's minefield that is the internet.
James, can I come to you? I want to ask a question. I'm just wondering whether there's ever a scenario, in your opinion, where being brave and pushing the boundaries is not a good thing. Because I think when we think about bravery, we think about the brands that have got the freedom to be creative and who are in a sector where they're able to do that and they're already sort of leveraging the audience that might be receptive to that. But then you think about a company that's selling something that's fairly, as you said, Beth, fairly straight and insurance about to do with death, and it's a fairly serious topic, and they've been able to do it really well. So can we think of any scenario, James, where being brave with your brand and your marketing isn't a good thing?
I think it looks differently for different sectors, but at the end of the day, like if you want to be vanilla, then be vanilla. But having that edge is really helpful. So, for example, like one thing I've been really impressed with recently is I actually hired a new accountant recently, and I found my accountant through TikTok. So this particular accountant, she's got like a big accountancy firm called Strivex, and she's like an accountant influencer on sort of TikTok and Instagram and stuff like that. And it was like the most unexpected thing ever. But for me, as a entrepreneur who works in the social media space, I'm looking at it, I'm going, this woman gets me, because like she's going to understand my business instantly. Because she does the same thing as me, basically. So I think even when it comes to things like that, like I have never seen another accountant on TikTok, especially as free as she is, doing TikTok dances and stuff like that. But it's like really relatable content, almost like the kind of Ryanair stuff. So yeah, I think that being brave just looks different based on what sector you're in. But I can't think of a scenario where it's like, yeah, you should just be vanilla and do what everyone else does. I don't think that's good business.
No, okay, that's fair. So let's just take a step back from it. I think if there's somebody watching this that probably doesn't put their marketing strategy in the brave category or any part of it in the brave category, they'll most likely be using phrases like highest quality service and all that sort of that sort of fairly middle lane boring rubbish. I guess if they're now listening to you and thinking, yeah, this makes sense, what would be our advice to them in terms of getting started with pushing themselves out of their comfort zone a little bit more without what I guess is the inevitable fear, which is that reputation might change, that companies might make a really strong opinion on what they think about us. We're playing safe, at least we have no risk of being perceived as a bad organization. I'm just wondering what your advice would be to somebody who's starting to think, as they listen to you, maybe I should be more brave. How do they get started? And Lewis, I might come to you if that's all right first for this one.
Yeah, I think the first thing we say to people is that you don't have a brand. People say it's not on brand for us. You don't have a brand. You're an SME with a set of brand guidelines. You're not a Nike or whatever. And you also got to remember that people have very, very short memories. Chris Brown was literally beating up Rihanna a few years ago, and now he's just doing sellout events at the AO Arena, and everyone who's in him is the front row cheering him on. So I think people, when they sit and tell me, oh, it's not on brand for you, you don't know what's brand for you yet because you haven't got enough data. You know, if you're a couple of years into the journey, or this is just the way that we are, you're never going to grow. Because obviously what we do, the paid advertising side in particular, is about constant split testing. You're split testing angles, you're split testing audiences, you're split testing creative. So if you're sat in just one thing and saying, like, this is who our market is and this is how we want to speak to them, you're never, ever going to scale that business. And that's just a fact of life. So if people choose to accept that, fantastic. And if they don't, then please go and be someone else's headache, because that isn't how you grow a business.
Yeah, okay. Beth?
Well, I also think, though, that there's sometimes a bit of a misconception about what being brave looks like. And, you know, James, you kind of touched on this. And I do think it's quite important. I especially come across this in brand language stuff, but I think it's true of all marketing. I think it's quite important not to mistakenly feel that being brave has to look a certain way, that being brave means being hilarious or being really edgy or being really contrarian or being really sweary or whatever. I think bravery does look really different for every business and every sector. And so I think sometimes that can be behind people's fear of, like, oh, I can't be brave, because they think that being brave looks like a certain thing. An example, actually, you know, so a client I'm working with at the moment, a big music venue up north. We're working with them on their voice at the moment. On, it's kind of a longer story, but they're in a place where how they sound at the moment is really not at all reflective of what they're actually like. There's a lot of life and passion and quirkiness and humour in the organisation, and actually they come across as very dry and formal and boring. And so we're working to change that. But alongside of being a music venue, they also do a lot of music education stuff and a lot of investment in local artists. And so they're actually a charity as well. And a big part of where they get their income is funding. They do a lot of funding applications. And one of the areas where we're really working on their language is in funding application language. There's a real set idea of how you do a funding application, and a particular set of language, a particular set of jargon and kind of tick boxes that almost everybody kind of follows and does in that area. And they, I think, are being really brave in that they are prepared to step away from that. And we are working out what this new kind of brand voice looks like in that context. And it frankly is the kind of thing where no one is ever going to like screenshot a bit of their funding application and put it on LinkedIn and be like, oh my God, guys, check us out. It's so fucking edgy and, you know, brave. No one's ever going to do that, because it's not particularly funny, or, you know, I think they've got a good brand voice going forward, but it's not particularly, you know, like innocent or Oatly or Brewdog or whatever. But what they're doing is actually really brave, because they're one of the few organizations I've ever come across who are really prepared in a situation where actual money is on the line. You know, they could potentially not get funding because they're daring to do something very different in this particular niche. And so I just think that is quite an important thing to hold on to, that, yeah, let's not conflate bravery with it's got to be hilarious and screenshotable and a whole bunch of marketers wank themselves off about how hilarious it is on LinkedIn. You know, bravery can look different in different contexts.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point. I want to come back to that in a minute. I just want to go to Matty, if that's okay. Matty, just keen to just same sort of question, I guess. Where do people start with bravery? And I think what we're getting is bravery can be very different. But if they're very clearly thinking, I'm definitely not being brave at the moment, where would you encourage people to turn first in terms of testing this? I think
to strip it all back, I think even this conversation itself, you know, coming last on this little segment, you know, that's 4 voices of advice of how to be brave. That in itself can be quite daunting, and it sort of contributes to what Beth was saying about how does bravery look like to you? Well, you know, it doesn't have to be all these things. It can be the simplest version. And for a lot of startups, I think they forget that their risk is actually their own. It's not the risk of somewhat of the boot coming down and stepping on them. They, like Lewis said, they don't have that brand to lose yet. They don't have that voice. They can change. They're supposed to be adapting in that phase of their sort of business lifestyle. So for me, what they really need to be doing to be brave is just to strip it back and be yourself and not worry about those risks. I know it sounds a little bit wanky, but you can't really go too far wrong with a risk if you know you're not trying to, if that makes sense. And if someone bigger does come and they are offended by it, or if someone is, one, you're not going to take them with you. And if they are bigger, while you have nothing to play with, you're obviously not going to take that on. So to me, that those being brave and taking risks in the beginning should be easier. The reason it's not is because you're in a room of people you've never met before. You're amongst brands that feel bigger, that look bigger. They're often not really. So to me, risk taking in terms of like a company's life cycle actually should get harder because they've got more to lose. So in the beginning, you probably learn more from your risks and your mistakes, and then you're trying to grow an actual audience that works with you, which then goes into the trust and how you can work with that audience.
So on that, I'm keen to get everybody's take on the notion of like, all advertising is good advertising. So, we want to stand out, we want to differentiate. And I'm just going to, very short story to set the scene. We have a client who once did a TV advert that had a baby in it. It was very strange. If you've seen it, you'll know about it, where all of the staff saw this advert with this superimposed baby talking and singing and went, oh my God, what is this? But the irony is, several years later, people are still talking about it. People are still discussing how bad that advert was. And I think that brings me back to that notion of like, all publicity is good publicity because you're getting noticed and you're putting the brand out there. Do we believe in that? So is it okay to do bad stuff or stuff that might be perceived as bad in inverted commas, but is getting you noticed and is getting it out there? Or do we feel there's a point where that we might be getting noticed for the wrong things has a negative impact? I'm just keen to understand your narrative on that. Beth, I might come to you first on this one.
Yeah, I feel like I'm going to be kind of annoyed. It's one of the few things I'm a bit on the fence about. I don't really know. I don't totally know the answer. I think I'm inclined to think, like Lewis mentioned earlier about, Chris Brown. Like, I just think on the whole, people have quite short memories. And I also think that most consumers tend to, like, if asked in a poll, think that they wouldn't buy from a company that does this, or they wouldn't buy from a brand that believes X. But actually, when it comes down to it, we mostly just buy quite selfishly and based on what we need or want in the immediate moment. And so I think I do tend towards the side of most publicity is good publicity, and it is good to just kind of get your name out there. I think there possibly are one or two things where, for a certain set of people, if you really screw yourself over, it is almost impossible to come back from that. But I think those are quite rare exceptions. I think I come down on the side of most publicity is good publicity. James,
what's your take on that?
Yeah, I would agree. I think that, again, what Lewis said before about basically no one really cares is so true. Like, people don't care about your brand. People don't like have a long memory when it comes to this stuff. I think that the tragedy would be keep doing what you're doing and keep getting the same results. Like, if you want to grow, if you want to make progress with your business, with your brand, you need to try new stuff. And I think that the more people can adapt a sort of test and learn approach when it comes to things, and not be super like concerned about their brand guidelines, and concerned about how they're perceived, and concerned about how their bloody Instagram feed looks when you look at it at the feed, when no one looks at it from the profile view anyway. This is the sort of stuff that just makes you get stuck in a rut of doing the same thing. Test stuff and be brave about testing stuff. Don't be so particular about things that actually really don't matter and will be long forgotten in a week's time.
Really good point. Lewis and Matt, if you want to add anything, add it now, but I don't need to come to everybody for every answer. You've got any strong opinions, go for it. If not, I'll move on to the next question.
You can carry on for me if you want.
I can't see. Lewis is frozen, so I'm going to assume... Oh, you're on mute, Lewis.
Marketing is indifferent. So it's like, love me or hate me, but please just don't ignore me. Because I do it all the time, and I'll purposely just needle people online because I know it'll annoy them. They'll hate it. Great. Then it goes out to their network, which is full of people that actually love it, and then we get more clients from it. So yeah, I think if you're just trying to aim for indifference, you've already lost. Obviously, don't go too far. If you're being like racist, homophobic, then you're just a bellend. But as far as that goes, everything you say should have an emotion attached to it, and whether you're prodding a positive emotion or a negative emotion, there needs to be some kind of emotion attached where people react and go, I care about this enough to give my opinion on it. And you don't get that from being vanilla. If you're saying something that everybody agrees with, you're not saying anything at all.
I'm glad you
just sorry, I know I said Karen, but literally that's what we do at Offended. Sometimes we get actually misunderstood that our aim is to offend people or to push that and be edgy, but in reality what it is it's knowing that boundary. It's knowing that there's always going to be someone that's offended, but you're not aiming to do that, so you shouldn't really worry about doing anything bad, really, because whatever you do, someone's going to be offended. You're going to lose a customer every day, or you're going to lose an engaged audience member every day by something you're doing, even if you're not trying to do that.
I think that just on this whole topic, I think that we all look at brands, particularly online, but in general when it comes to like marketing, sales processes, etc., and we sort of learn from other brands how to act like a brand. The problem is that actually, I think that if we want to be brave, we need to act like humans and have our brands act like humans rather than act like brands. So like we do this a lot when it comes to social media. It's like, really, and I think this will help people to sort of unpick the process of being brave for their brand. Because if you think about, well, how do I make my brand more human? You think about, how do people post on social media? Well, people don't post buy my shit. They post something that's interesting or funny or relatable, and they do it in a pretty like ghetto way. They don't, it's generally not like super polished, but also about communication as well. You make a new friend, a bar or an event, right? I connect with them on WhatsApp. So I try, from a business to business point of view, I try and do most of my communication via WhatsApp rather than email, right? You connect with someone new on LinkedIn. You don't pitch to them immediately, but maybe you send them a voice note, because how often do you get a voice note on LinkedIn? Maybe you send them a little video message, because how often do you get a video message on LinkedIn? And then suddenly you're actually, rather than behaving like a brand, like a business, like we've been taught to behave like a brand, you're actually becoming more human. And so I think looking at those all the processes across all of your business, all of your brand, and going, how can I make this more human? How can I behave like a human, not a brand? Like that is to me, the first step towards bravery.
Brilliant advice. Absolutely love that, because we all sort of shut down a big percentage of ourselves when we behave in a business way, don't we? We're a minuscule version of ourselves because that's what society has taught us. So it's a really fantastic point. James, I'm just going to stick with you for a minute, because you mentioned something in your previous point around testing, and you talked about going out and testing it. And I guess the obvious question is that how do you test it? So what are you doing if you're going out and doing something brave for the first time? What sorts of measurements are you looking at to test that it's working or not?
Yeah, I mean, I'd be super interested to hear from Lewis after I share some of my stuff, because I imagine that Lewis does a lot of this stuff very in depth. But for me, it's about like, when we're doing stuff on social media, trying different types of posts, like going, okay, Instagram is leaning a bit more towards video, so let's do reels, but let's try a reel where we've got a person in it. Let's try a reel that's an animation. Let's try a reel that's just shot with iPhone. Let's try a reel that's, shot with a professional camera, and just try and figure out, okay, well, what's hitting? Is it the educational content? Is it the funny sort of comedy content? Like, be prepared to try different things and try things that look different and see what the audience is resonating with. Likewise, it's, if you're doing cold email, for example, we're doing a lot of cold email at the moment, and it's about split testing the messages. Try something that's a bit more formal, but then try something that's like really wildly different to that, that's very informal and full of emojis. Try something that's got memes in it or gifs in it, emails that have got, I think that it's about just like trying different stuff and then measuring. And I think, maybe I'll pass to Lewis, because I feel like Lewis has probably got some good insights into this.
Yeah, it's tough for people that are like particularly creative agencies as well, because creating good content and planning, having good ideas is the hardest bit. Then producing that content is really important. But then if the distribution side isn't there, it can be the best content in the world, but if it's not delivered to the right audience in the right way, it's going to fall on its arse, and then you're going to get the blame for it. So we're very, very fortunate that we try and take control of the entire process, from getting the idea, getting the content produced, and then amplifying it. And we are constantly just split testing. We've got the luxury. If it was just organic, you don't get enough data back to make any representative decisions. We can go, right, here are the 3 angles, here's the 4 creatives. It can be the exact same creative, the exact same, just with 4 different hooks on the front of it. Okay, this hook gets the best thumb stop ratio. Okay, the same piece of creative here, 4 different colors on it. One gets a 10x, one gets a 2x. Imagine if you just run with a 2x, you wouldn't know if that was great or not. So it's constantly, you should never ever be running kind of one campaign, one angle, one ad set, one ad. There always needs to be multiple things going, and having the luxury of being able to go to a client when they go, we want it this way, and I go, no, that's shit, let's do it this way. Okay, well, let's let the data decide, let's run both together. Ours will outperform theirs, and there's no better argument than that. Like, the numbers show, if you go with the other when the data shows it, you're an idiot. And you'd be surprised how many people still want to go with theirs, won't deviate from who they're targeting. So it's just one of those conversations where you've just got to be blunt. If the numbers are in front of you and you're deciding to go against the data, against what your customers are directly telling you, that's an issue with your ego, rather than you're the thing that's stopping the business growing, not the content.
Matty, come on, Beth, go, please.
The thing that also is just helpful about that, kind of talking about the data and the testing and stuff, is that I also think it's really important not to mistake being reckless for being brave. And that actually a lot of the time there's this feeling of like bravery must mean just doing something crazy and random with not much thought, and like, we'll just do this mad thing, when actually I think bravery needs a lot of thought behind it. The bit that's the brave bit is the fact that the thing you're doing is maybe different than what you've done before, or different from what other people in your sector are doing, or it's a bit unexpected or countercultural or whatever. That doesn't mean that there can't be all kinds of planning behind it, that you need to have a solid reason for why you think it's going to work, why it's worth taking the risk. When you've got data or just kind of anecdotal evidence, whether you've done some testing already, whatever it is, actually having a proper process and thought and planning behind your bravery is actually really important.
Matty, anything to add on the testing side?
Yeah, I mean, just to caveat on what Beth said, I think I totally agree with that. Being brave is being conscious of the risk and doing it anyway. It's not, it's not just doing something. It's not running into battle because you want to die. It's knowing the risk and going in and doing it and still achieving what you want to do. I think to carry on what Lewis said, as a content marketing agency who obviously we're coming up with the ideas and stuff, we meet so many clients who the hardest part of their first retainer they sign with us is actually dropping that ego. It's, we'll have static content, we'll have video, we'll have animation, we'll have anything. And it's so difficult to convince them that this can be them if they want it. I think too many people nowadays, they want earning a business to look a certain way instead of it to feel what they wanted from it. So instead of it being successful and growing with that and realizing that as soon as you set up a business, it's a thing in its own right. And like you said about sort of being human, it's going to evolve, it's going to change. You're not always going to recognize your own business. No. So the point is you've got to feed it with things, and you've got to look after it, and you've got to react to it as well. And I think too many times people, they're not content enough with having a successful business. They feel like it needs to represent them as well, and that gets in the way of things. They don't just want, I don't know, say they're selling jumpers and it appeals to old ladies. They're not happy with that if they're a 25-year-old male who's into this. They all of a sudden they want to sort of bastardize that to look and be cool for them, and they end up ruining what they've got. So yeah, I think being brave is just about being conscious of risks, and in terms of testing, it's you don't test to find out what works. You test to find out what doesn't work, and when you get a little bit of scrap of something to work with, you then go down that path and you start doing even more varied stuff.
Love that. Got a question for the audience. I'm just going to pop it up here. So James has asked about, can you share a time where you took a risk in a campaign that didn't pay off? I think, it's a really good point to balance out the discussion here a little bit around, risks don't always work. We test for a reason. And to your point, Matty, that was brilliant. You know, sometimes we test to find out what doesn't work. And I'd love to hear any examples that you've got. I won't point it at anyone in case somebody's got one to mind and others haven't. Has anyone got an example they could give?
Well, just before, I think something not paying off can be two things. You know, from us as marketing agencies or whatever. You know, not paying off can be the client not being happy. Yeah. And then the other version of not paying off can be it doesn't get the results. We find we have more of the first not paying off, where something's gone live and it's going crazy, and then they want to pull it because actually they're going, oh, we don't want that. We don't want this type of publicity, or we don't want to be seen as that. But ultimately, we've delivered exactly what they want. You've got an audience to work with. You can start filtering and working with that as time goes on. So for us, I think we had one where we were working with sort of an edgy startup brewing company, and we directly went after their competitors. So we basically did some static campaigns, quite sort of towing the line of what people would find offensive. But it was basically saying, if you drink these brands, you align with these. And it was getting a lot of traction straight away. But ultimately, as soon as it started doing that, they wanted to pull it because ultimately it had these certain things in it that were offensive. What we were trying to say was, you're not that, but those are. And it was sort of dragging it down. But that didn't work on a client side of things, rather than it not actually working for results.
Good example. Thank you. Anyone else got anything they want to?
Yeah, we had one with there's a watch brand, startup watch brand, and watch brands are hard. Like, it's so saturated, everything sounds the same, looks the same. So we thought, right, we'll do something a little bit different here. It was kind of inspired by how luxury watches look. So we were like, right, it looks like a Rolex, tells time like a Breitling, costs the same as a G-Shock. And then one of those brands has obviously come down, and the ad account was banned and all that stuff because apparently trying to promote other people's brands. So tried it, didn't get it, but it was better than putting out some shit about how iconic and beautiful you feel wearing a watch, because every other watch ad looks like that. So that was a missed one, but worth a try.
Brilliant. Any other examples? Otherwise, I'll move us on.
Just another thing. I was just going to say, just another thing. I think when something doesn't pay off, you don't always have to see it as a loss. It can be an opportunity to remarket what didn't pay off. You know, what Dan does a lot, speaking on his behalf today, when something doesn't work or something goes wrong with a client or when something doesn't land, we use it as an opportunity to communicate with our audience. We got that wrong, or we tried this and people misunderstood it, and we try and educate an audience, or we try and, again, being human, reacting to your own stuff is also important. So that could be another inhibitor and something you can remove when you're trying to be brave, is just not seeing everything as this campaign is the Everest. There's going to be something off the back of that, and it can be the starter of new ideas.
Beth, I want to come back to you. Earlier on, you mentioned the bravery doesn't always have to be about the creativity element. It doesn't have to be about, doing something right out there or controversial. Sometimes it's about just pushing yourself or just doing something you're not doing now or whatever. And I guess that leads me back to something I talked briefly with you guys about in the warm-up for this yesterday when we just got to know each other a little bit. It's about the fact that actually a business might be brave by going, you know what, I'm going to put more budget that I'm comfortable putting towards this campaign, or we're going to put this in front of a new audience that we've not tested before. So bravery can be, yes, in the creative, in the voice, in the brand, in the marketing, but it can also be in the budget decisions, the appetite to grow, the level of ambition at which you go at a market. Because if I'm normally spending 10 grand a month on something, I suddenly spend 20, that's bravery in itself. And I guess I'm keen to just get any other good examples or commentary around that. So bravery in growing a brand isn't just in the pictures and the words, but also the mechanisms and the attitude at which you go at something.
Yeah. Well, and I also think that we can tend to think about bravery in terms of an act of bravery, in terms of doing something, where often sometimes bravery is about what you don't do, and about what you say no to, or what you draw the line at, or the parameters you put around something. I think there can often be bravery in that. I'm trying to think of some example, like a really, really small example from my own business is that I just made the decision quite a long time ago that I'm not going to be on most social media channels. So the only social media channel I am on is LinkedIn, and I don't do any of the others. I'm not on Twitter, I'm not on Instagram, I'm not even thinking about TikTok, thank God. But that has been at times a difficult, people kind of going, oh, I can't, you should really be on Twitter, or, and as new things come up, kind of feeling the temptation of like, oh, do I need to but just kind of standing firm on, actually, no, I've only got the time and the resources to really meaningfully engage with one platform. This is the one I've identified as being where most of my customers are. That's where I put the time in, and sticking to that. And I think, that could be true across just a number of different areas of also knowing when to say, no, I'm not going to do that, or everyone else is doing that, but actually I'm going to hold back from doing that because we don't think it's right. And I think that, there can be a real bravery in stuff you don't do and stuff you say no to as well.
Good point. Matty, you must have had some clients that have made some really brave decisions over the years where you think they're never going to go for this, and then they do.
Yeah, for sure. What we tend to do is we get a lot of clients come to us because they've heard of how we're willing to do it, and then they feel very uncomfortable for the whole process, to be honest. And it's our job to go like, it's going to be all right, which feeds into a lot of what we already spoke about. From my point of view, as the person who's like often making the content, a lot of the time it's like this balance between, how they want it to look, what it's actually saying, and then what they want to do. The thing that never changes is what they want it to do. They always want it to be successful, but they're quite malleable in terms of, okay, well, it's a corporate animated explainer video, but we can explain what you're doing as a construction company by telling a completely different story and making it engaging in a different way. And sometimes, we were talking about before about fitting in and things like that, and what you were saying, Beth, about not existing on different platforms. I think bravery can come in the form of understanding your limits and working within that. And what we try and tell our clients is, it's about learning them and being brave every step of the way. You're not going to be brave all the time. There are going to be days you're going to doubt what you're doing, but it's about trusting in that process, learning from it, and going back to the drawing board with it. Yeah, most of our clients, they it's a little bit like therapy in a way. They want to come to us and learn how we do it. And as I say, a lot of the time we're actually convincing them it's okay. So that's our sort of dynamic with our clients most of the time. So
thank you. Lewis, can I come to you on that? And just I guess what I'm thinking is just this narrative around, I think Beth made a really good point. This like bravery can be in being controversial or whatever. And I'm keen to hear any stories you've got where you've seen business owners, CMOs, people that own a brand, just push outside of the normal limit somewhat, maybe against the grain of their organization, or do something that's really caught your attention.
Yeah, you know what? They're sometimes our favorite ones. Obviously, we've got a lot of kind of like D2C brands where they're open to creativity, but it's actually the B2B brands, your HRs, your finance, your insurance brokers and stuff. Because that market is so deathly vanilla, you really, really don't have to do a lot to stand out in it. So we were doing some ghostwriting for St. James's Place, like wealth managers, the IFAs and stuff like that. And a lot of them were just talking the same shite, spouting the same shite to basically other advisors and staying in this little bubble. We just got one to do a video, just introducing himself, and he got like 3 clients from it. It's not a big thing. He's just like, hello, my name's Dave, and this is who I help. That was it. Done. Like, you don't have to strap a dildo to your head and run down the street. That's literally just a very small change that nobody else was doing, that was achievable within his limits. And then suddenly everyone wants to start doing it now. But we're big on data. It's nice to have like the creative ideas, but I always think it's a tough conversation unless you can back it up by data, because then it's opinion versus opinion. So we go, actually, we've done it, we've tested it, and this is what worked. People don't really have anywhere to go with that, which I like that scenario, because I don't really like arguing with people. I just let the numbers do the talking most of the time. So yeah, that's a good example of it, where it's just baby steps. See how far you want to push it, but stay within your comfort zone.
And on the example of running down the street with a dildo strapped to your head, I'm just wondering of like, we must have seen some bad examples where people have got a bit carried away with the notion of being brave or out there or controversial somewhere, and got a step or two too far. Maybe we've got some horror stories amongst us. Oh, maybe not. Not in your client base, at least, I suppose.
Yeah, they're in jail now.
All right. Well, in which case, let me ask a different question. And James, I'll come to you on this one if that's okay. I'm keen to just get your commentary on the role of leadership in promoting a culture of risk-taking and bravery, because it's very easy as a business owner to say, you know what, yeah, I'm going to be brave with this. We're going to do something that makes people feel uncomfortable. We're going to do something that, to Maddie's point, I really like that we know there's a risk, but we do it anyway. But if you're managing somebody else's brand as an employee, you kind of need to be empowered to do that. You need to be enabled. You need to know that it's okay and that it's okay to fail. And of course, the reason B2B is so vanilla is because you've got brands that are looking after something and they're thinking, geez, I can't get this wrong, right? Nobody ever got sacked for choosing Cisco or whatever that brand is that people always talk about because it's safe. And I think there's a fear of standing out and a fear of change and a fear of being different to some degree. So how does leadership promote a culture where it's okay to take risks? It's okay to get things wrong with our brand and our marketing.
I think you've got to lead by example, don't you? I mean, I think that's the only way is to show the way, and to show how we do things. And that might mean, as a leader, getting your hands a little bit dirty on a project with some of your team. But then you can lead the way and you can set the tone. And I think that's the only way to do it.
Yeah.
Simple
Beth,
as that.
any thoughts on that?
Yeah, as I said, I also wonder if obviously it's really different in companies' internal culture, like how you talk about things anyway, and how you kind of celebrate wins and that kind of stuff. But I also think that maybe there's something in as you internally talk about work that's going on, and you do take time to celebrate the wins, that you focus a lot on the output as well as the outcome. So you're actually taking time to value, like looking at something even before it's happened and kind of say, right, we're doing a new campaign on X, we've gone in a bit of a different direction, feels quite risky, but we think it's going to work for these reasons. And actually we just want to take this time to say thanks to everyone who's worked on it, and here's what they've done well, and this is good. And, we're going to wait and see what happens, but, thanks for putting the work in, and just actually taking some time to value the stuff that people are doing almost before you find out if it's been successful. Like, obviously it is really important. Like we're saying, the whole point of these things is to be successful. And obviously that's what you're driving for. That's why you test. That's why you try and find the stuff that works. But I think making it clear to people that even if it doesn't work, they've still put effort in, they've still put thinking in, they're trying to do something that works. And so kind of valuing that contribution, because it's also true, I think, that we most often attribute the label of brave to things after they've succeeded. And it's quite easy to do that when there's been like a real epic, crazy campaign that's gone really well and everyone's like, oh God, it's so brave, it's so brave. Whereas actually looking at something at the time and saying, do you know what, regardless of whether this goes right or wrong, this is really brave, and kudos to the team that's pulled this together. So I think taking time to focus on the effort and the output before you do the outcome is probably helpful.
Yeah,
I think
would agree
also
with that. Yeah, go on, sorry, mate.
Sorry, Lewis.
Lewis.
All right. Yeah, I think just kind of thinking about this a little bit more. I think having a culture where ideation is something that happens very naturally, and that there are no such thing as bad ideas. There are just ideas. And I think that, having your people comfortable sharing ideas is really important, because something that you might label as a bad idea, someone vocalizing that could then, that idea could have idea sex with someone else's idea and become a good idea, right? Or, that could lead you down a trail where you actually end up with coming up with a good idea. So, having like we celebrate ideation within our business. Like we encourage all of our team to write 10 ideas a day. It doesn't matter what it's about. And again, there's no bad ideas. There's just ideas. You write 10 ideas a day, and suddenly you're going to have some really good ideas. Over the course of a year, you're going to have some good ideas. So yeah, I think that's really important.
Yeah, I think what everyone's alluded to there as well, I know a couple of people have mentioned it, is managing that expectation with the client. Because if you are testing 4 things, there's going to be 1 winner, there's going to be 3 that lose. That's not wasted money. That is, as Matty said, working out what doesn't work, which is just as important, particularly on a smaller scale when you can be agile on smaller budgets before you start pumping money into stuff. It's pretty important to know what doesn't work. So I think managing that expectation to the client of going, yeah, there's 10 ideas, 9 might be shite, but the one that comes off will come off massively, and that you shouldn't really be criticized or look at it as a failure. I think everything's a kind of lesson. I know that sounds a bit wanky. There's no such thing as a failure, only lessons. But Simon Sinek's just going to come in now and just nod. But no, that's my 2 cents on it anyway.
Yeah, just on that, like for me, like I come at it from a different angle. So like me being a member of the team, we were at the mercy of our leadership, which would have been Dan. And for me, it sort of goes on what Beth was saying, being offended as a member of the team, it's about being brave every day. You're not posting stuff every day. You're not putting content out every day. You may have to work on a campaign behind the scenes for 2-3 weeks for even longer. And if you don't believe in it, you're not going to be brave when it comes to posting it. So it's about being brave in every step, about being brave in the ideas. It's about being brave in the execution. I know offended. We've had clients, we've had staff members who haven't quite got it. It can be times when you can see their belief in what's happening wavering, and their work suffers and the results suffer. So what it's about for us is like Dan has never waned on that, and we always trust that it's coming from a good place, and that makes it very easy to do that. And I mean, I've illustrated some of the most ridiculous things. I mean, last week we did some job ads, and the brief I got was to illustrate a nun giving somebody a blowjob, in the idea that we would get on our knees for our customers. And a year ago, I'd have probably said, I don't know if we should do that, Dan. I don't even know if it made it out there, but that's what we did. And there was numerous versions of that. And, I think even Dan was thinking that one might be the thing that ends us. But I had the belief to do that, to be that. And that obviously came from that leadership. If I had that idea myself, I probably would have put that in the bin. So
I love this. Like, we've gone wanking off, idea sex, dildos trapped ahead, and nuns giving a blowjob to someone. I mean, the tone of this conversation is quite incredible, isn't it, when you think about it?
Yeah. What's ironic though is we got. Yeah, I was going to say what's ironic though is we got over 500 applicants for the job, so it didn't fail. For a video editor. So okay. Don't ask.
Shocker. Right, I'm keen to just there'll be people listening to this that I think would have come in to the beginning of this and gone, yeah, I'm brave. I want to understand how other people are doing it. There'll be people that in there thinking, oh, I want to be more brave and I want to learn about what I should be thinking about. And there'll be people that be 52 minutes into this conversation thinking, yeah, still not convinced. And I'm guessing that the reasons will be, my client base, they just won't buy from this kind of stuff. They're not the kind of people that would like bravery, that sort of stuff, the stuff that we tell ourselves all the time. So I'm just going to go around, I guess, last point for today. And if there's anything else you want to add that's really poignant, go for it. But what do you say to those people? What do you say to the haters, the people that say, nah, not right for us, wrong industry for this, or our audience are not the audience you want to do this kind of stuff with? One last chance to convince them to go and be brave and that it'd be a good thing for their business. Matty, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I'd say the reason you're listening is because deep down you know that you need to be more brave, and so listen to that thought. If you're tuning in stuff and disagreeing with it, like ask yourself why you're tuning into it. I think dropping insecurity early on is massive. Not worrying what how success looks to you. Stop worrying about that, and I don't know how to say it really. Just not putting boundaries and limits on yourself, especially while you're starting up. What it's really about is being successful, and it's being successful in a way that works for you. Like, if you are boring, then be boring. People will trust it. Because ultimately, there's trust is a huge part of what we do, and it's typically we don't really get the time to earn it. People have to buy in, or they don't buy at all. Yeah. So it's just work out what's authentic. do that well, deliver on it well, and change and evolve and be willing to do that.
Beth, come to you for 1 minute. 1 minute pitch.
Well, I sort of feel like I'll say two things that sound a bit contradictory, but I don't think are. I feel like the first thing is actually important to say, not to just totally undercut the entire webinar, but you don't necessarily have to be brave, actually, if you don't want to be, in the sense of being brave is not the goal. The goal is to be effective in marketing. And sometimes that takes bravery, but sometimes it doesn't necessarily. So I think that is something to hold on to. You don't actually have to be brave all the time. Like sometimes you just have something, you know it works, and it works, so you do it. You know, effectiveness is the goal. Bravery is just a tool that sometimes gets you there. Yeah. But then I think the other thing on the flip side of that I would say is just be brave, because like, why the fuck not? I mean, Jesus, it's marketing. Like, it's not life or death. And I say that I make my living in the marketing realm and I love what I do, but it's just, no one's dying at the end of the day. Like, just give it a go. What's the worst that could happen?
Lewis, over to you. Love that.
I would just say, prove it. Like, my opinion isn't worth shit. Neither is yours. The only people that matter are your customers. If you actually want to run a business and actually pay your mortgage and your energy bills, that's what really matters. So why don't you put it out there? If it comes back that you were right, fantastic. But I would say that 80-90% of people that come to us knowing exactly who they want to target, once you actually put that out at scale, they've been wrong. So be willing and fluid to deviate with that. And if you don't want to follow the facts in front of your face, then you're not going to have a business for very long at the end of the day. So for me, I just go with the numbers.
And James, what do you say to those people who are still thinking bravery isn't for them?
Well, I think what I would say is, if you want things to continue as they are with your business, then keep doing what you're doing. If you want to grow, evolve, ride the wave, then suck it and see.
Fair enough. Well, I'm conscious there's two final comments. One which it hasn't pulled through on the comments publicly, but has been put on LinkedIn around how we see chat and content evolving with the outbreak of like Chat GPT and AI. I'm going to save that for another conversation unless somebody's got an amazing point, because I guess it'll only ever be as brave as you tell it to be. So I think you've still got to have the culture and the person behind it driving. Yeah, I don't think you can really put into Chat GPT, I don't want to be brave. Can you be brave for me with my brand? So probably going to leave that one. But I think a really good question had I spotted it earlier. And the other one is, and I'm going to do this one because it'll make me laugh. Wondering how brave you are, Matty. Would you ask Matty if he had a gun to his head and had to choose his favorite boss? Who would he pick? And I thought I can't end this without asking.
Yeah, well, I can see the picture who came up. I would have picked my favorite boss.
Is he your old boss or something?
He's Dan's business partner. So he's logging on to put a little bit of pressure on me there. I'm going to go with Dan, seeing as Dean asked that.
Dean clearly wasn't brave enough to be the step in.
No, exactly. And he's absolutely terrible at ping pong. And so that's all I'll say.
Love it. Last 30 seconds each, guys. Just as a thank you for coming on and sharing your take. I'd just love to give you 30 seconds just to individually tell our audience who you help and how they can get in touch with you. So what sort of companies do you help? How do you help them really quickly? And how can they get in touch with you if they want to talk to you? So I'll just go around the opposite order, if that's all right. James, I'll come to you first.
Yeah, so we work with food brands. If you sell in the supermarkets or you're a fast food brand, you can get in touch with us via my LinkedIn, James Brooks on LinkedIn. I've got a big purple background on my profile pic. And if you want to do some brave stuff on social media, content creation, brand activations, give me a call. Don't call me. I'm millennial. Like, you don't call me without booking an appointment.
That's too brave. Lewis?
We work with B2B and B2C, to be honest with you. So if you're looking to elevate online, but just be wary that we probably will be asking you to be brave with what we do, because we don't really like working with vanilla brands. We like a bit of Raspberry Ripple. So if you've got some money, you've got an attitude to risk, then you're the perfect one for us.
And if you fancy strapping a dildo to your head, you're sorted. Lewis is your man.
Yeah, that's month 2. It's in the contract. Look at the small print. It's in the contract.
We'll warm you up there. Easy win. Beth, over to you.
Since I'm pretty niche in terms of a very small area of marketing around brand language, actually I'm not niche at all in terms of the companies that I work for. So any kind of company, B2C, B2B, it just tends to be people with sort of 30, 40, 50 employees up, not really small businesses. But yeah, keen for whoever. And as previously mentioned, you won't find me anywhere apart from LinkedIn. So
yours is more around the tone of voice, copy, the written word rather than
brand voice development stuff. Yeah.
Matty, final one.
Yeah, I'll flip on its head. So we're brave enough to work with anybody. So if you are vanilla and you need a bit of help to be brave, go on LinkedIn and go to the offended page. If you're really brave, then we'll be a great fit. Yeah. Love
it. Thank you to each and every one of you. Really appreciate your contribution to the discussion. Genuinely enjoyed it. And I think really lit the fire for people in terms of giving them what they need to go out and be a bit braver with their marketing and their brand over the coming days and weeks. So thank you very much to everybody tuning into this. Thanks for your comments and questions. Lewis, Matty, Beth, and James, thank you as well. Appreciate it.
Right. Bye.
Bye.
Cheers.
Yes.